So let's look at the data. Alfred Kinsey, 1954, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, found that 41% of American women over 25 had ever masturbated. 1954, 41%. In 1996, the single largest study of American sexual behavior ever undertaken in our history was done at the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. And they found that 90% of American women over 25 had masturbated. Now you'll agree with me, that's a big change in a short time. Comparable rates for men, 1948, Alfred Kinsey, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, 96% of men. 1996, Social Organization of Sexuality, 97% of men. Not a really big change there. How about another behavioral measure of the entitlement to pleasure? Not its present, but maybe its absence. 1975, sociologist Lillian Rubin did a study of women in the Bay Area called Worlds of Pain. And what she found, now remember how we think, a lot, some, a little, or nothing. She found that 40% of the women she's talked to said that they sometimes, or more often than sometimes, faked orgasm. Now that's a really good behavioral measure of the absence of your entitlement to pleasure, the silencing of your own sexual voice. So 20 years later, in 1995, she goes back to that same neighborhood, and she interviews women again. This time, some of the women she interviews the second time are the daughters of the women she had interviewed the first time. And now she finds that fewer than 10% of the women say they ever fake orgasm. Again, a really big change in a really short time. Now, there is no comparable research in all of the sex research literature on men faking orgasm, so I can't give you a kind of gender comparison there. But I think you get the idea that in four very fundamental ways, identity, work, family, and intimacy, women's lives have changed utterly. So while women's lives have changed so much in the past 40 years or so, what's been happening with men? That's kind of the results of the survey, I think. Now the easy answer, the one that most of you are probably thinking, is not very much. And I think that's only half true. I think of the world my father lived in. My dad went to an all-male college, served in an all-male military, and spent his entire working life in an all-male work environment. Well, I would say to the men in this room, that world is gone. There are only 4 all-male colleges left in America. There is no more all-male military, and there is virtually no job you will have where you won't have female colleagues, co-workers, bosses, or supervisors. That world is over. But what has not changed, if current surveys of college-aged men in America are to be believed, is the ideology of masculinity, what we think it means to be a man. That has remained relatively constant. One psychologist once described this ideology of masculinity. He basically said that there are basically 4 rules of masculinity. So if any of the guys in here are having any doubts or questions or anything, just get these right all the time. That's very important, all the time. First rule, just get this one right, okay? No sissy stuff. You can never do anything that even remotely hints of femininity. That's number 1. Number 2, be a big wheel. We measure your masculinity by the size of your paycheck. Wealth, power, safety. Did any of you ever see that bumper sticker that says, "He who has the most toys when he dies wins"? That's not gender-neutral language. Third rule, be a sturdy oak. What makes a man is that he's reliable in a crisis. What makes him reliable in a crisis is that he resembles an inanimate object. You know, a rock, a pillar. And the 4th rule, give them hell. Exude an aura of daring and aggression. Live life out on the edge. Take risks. Go for it. And if you live those 4 rules every split second of your life, you too could be a real man circa, say, 1950 or so. Now, what I'd like to do for a couple of minutes is I'd like to take those 4 rules of manhood and pair them up against those 4 areas of change in women's lives to suggest some of the things I think we're facing in our country.